So let's talk, let's just go in order. Let's start with the DRX one, SeeEL. So in this one, like, actually, DRX looked pretty good in those planes. Like, I think they've actually shown in this tournament they were probably a bit underrated themselves. Like, they can. So, look, they're not a great team, but like, where everyone else is showing this drop in level from the read, they're sort of just holding serve. And they're showing some pretty good games. Mate, the key thing for this one that I actually want to ask about immediately was, I saw Cloud Templar and a bunch of the Koreans made comments about LEC where they weren't impressed and they thought people were playing like the wrong champions in the meta. Mate, for all the people laughing that like in the West, no one could pull off the like Lucian Nami properly and it was like just bait in these drafts and people are picking it just to take it away from the other team. This looks fucking amazing in this game, mate. This is one of the best games of that like bot lane I've seen in ages.
Okay, first of all, I need to do a humble brag because I remember Dominate, because I watch Dominate's I Will Dominate's co-stream sometimes, and he was talking shit about Lucian Nami. So I wrote him a paragraph about how great we are, and then we picked it 3 times in a row against Fnatic. So we can make it work. We can make it work. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't look too great on the game days, but it just depends on like repetition. And in terms of meta, for example, I think it's egregious for me to say that everything that he's saying is incorrect because Lucian Nami did have a significant nerf with the E changes and electrocute. But that being said, it's like you got to play what you're good at. You know, I think I want to quote Yamato Cannon here because I like to take little bits and pieces from everyone. I remember he coached Sandbox Gaming when he was in the LCK, and they made a documentary. And he said, if you're not good at something, you need to specialize. And I completely agree with this, and I still use it to this day. Right? If you're not good at something, you need to specialize. And if you're good at something, just don't try to fix something that's not broken. And this is something that he said in the Vitality interview when he was taking them to Worlds in I think it was 2018 or something like this. And he said, Fnatic has to be Fnatic, Vitality has to be Vitality, and for us, Rogue has to be Rogue. And that mentality is what kind of led us to pick these champions. And you have to realize there's hundreds, thousands of hours, invested into these champions, the way that we play, the way we think about the game. And so I think that is way more important. And at the top level, obviously draft is what gives you the edge. But if you don't have good fundamentals, you're just not going to be performing well. And those fundamentals are developed all throughout the year. That's why systems matter, and the way that you think about the game matters more than anything. So that's kind of why we pick it that way. And it looked great as well, right? It looked great as well. So that helps our case a little bit more. And then the other thing is, I think that Freddie is incredibly intelligent about what he feels like is strong in the meta. He has a very good instinct for these things from when he was a player, I think. And he's one of those people where he actually stuck to the guns when I was not too sure. Like when we scrimmed 2 weeks in Europe before we went to Worlds, so a significant portion of our scrims. And I remember me and him having a discussion about this. I was like, I'm not too sure about this champion thing. He just sat down and he said, I think this is really good. And then we picked it and it looks great. So, I mean, full props to him and full props to his like instinct as well.
I mean, also, you had seen, what was shocked to me about this DRX game was that it seemed rather cocky because DRX themselves in the group stage was using Maokai as a pretty heavy crutch in some of their games. And Maokai is just so, we talked about this on the last show after play-ins, but this champion is just like, in my opinion, is pretty egregiously getting through a lot of drafts right now when people don't have adequate answers. And the things that Maokai can do is just disgusting. It's just actually disgusting. And you guys are the only team in groups that have run him top, but you can really see this was like the peak Maokai game. And we're going to get into this because I love the fact that top gave it to you as well and thought they could deal with it by like trying to look at this SeeEL's little grid. That's why we have to do this on video because he's not going to say shit, but he knows. Yeah. But yeah, Maokai, when you have the ability just to control vision on the flanks, to push into objectives with the saplings, when you can control literally the entire fucking river with your ultimate, make sure that these steals don't happen if you're using the Maokai ult effectively. You can zone at the start of it, kind of toy around with a dragon or a baron, and then, at 40, 50 seconds later, depending on itemization and runes, like that ult can be up again. And so you can get it off multiple times. You can gank effectively with single target, as we saw from Odoamne that had some absolutely incredible like arcane smashes to reposition people and push people towards the AD carry and the damage dealers. I mean, I thought his team fighting was really excellent in some of these games. you can absolutely use that CC to hit multiple people. Then you have the passive healing that he gets, and then you see, because this was a top lane Maokai that was very fed at 3 items, how fucking invulnerable this guy is.
For sure.
It's just gross. And so really fun, especially because a lot of people don't really remember that Odo Omne was a very famous old Maokai player, like on the previous versions, and a lot of the kit has remained similar, right? So it really brought me back some very fond memories of watching Odo Omne in the past, and it was very funny to see, in my opinion, the arrogance of letting this pick through and how powerful it can be in the right hands. And like you say, you couple that with your excellence on Lucian Nami. Larson's obviously going to be very comfortable on the Azir. You get the Trundle into the Sejuani, which is also top, so it's going to have more value because the Sejuani is going to be tankier with items. I thought this was a really fun game and a really fun draft. And I have been saying consistently that I don't think DRX is very good. And then everybody's like, oh, but Monty, they got through plans. I'm like, this team has they have a very, very distinct identity. And if you disrupt that identity, which you guys did, and you crush them in bot lane, in lane, for example, they will lose the game. Like the way DRX has won, if you watched LCK, was at the start of summer, they were playing Kalista Mumu and Ornn, and they would just win all of those games because they would smash through bot, and King is just an incredible Ornn player, right? As soon as people figured this out, they started taking those tools away. Now, should you give DRX very dominant bot lanes that they can play through? No. Like, don't do that. Like, fight them in the bot lane, because if they don't have these leads, they're not good at playing from behind. If they have leads, they are really technical about how they close them out. And you guys saw this. The reverse side of this identity for DRX is the fact that they can come in versus top esports, and you see them like 15-2 in kills. When they get leads, they close. When they have champions they are good at, Sylas, Caitlyn, Kalista, Ornn, they close if you give them the edge. So, and also top is kind of bad at playing. They're kind of bad at even playing from ahead. They threw those matches against JDG in both best of fives at LPL. But you really see the duality, I think, of DRX here between the way Rogue approached the game and the way the top esports approached the game. And I liked your strategy a lot better, needless to say.
Yeah,
any thoughts on DRX? I'm curious what you
I mean, you said a lot of actually really hype things and interesting things in that statement. So we'll start with DRX, and then I want to talk about Maokai a bit as well, because I think it's super fun. So DRX, personally, I didn't think they looked fundamentally that great. I think they came top 5 or I think 6th place in the playoffs, and then they had a deep regional finals run. And if you see the way they play, I completely agree with you, Monty. I've always said this, where I kind of stand in terms of the fundamentals of a team and how it relates to DRX is that I think that the fundamentals and the way in which people play is more important than the draft in a way, because with draft, if you have good players and you have somewhat competent coaching staff, you can always make adaptations even overnight, right? That's the fact. But when you start talking about how you play the game, this is very, very hard to do in terms of where to stand, how to retake, when should you trade the map, these kind of things, right? And I felt like that was kind of one of the main weaknesses of DRX, and they mostly got through due to explosiveness in that team and being able to like smash through bot. For example, Zeka out of lane, incredibly explosive player. In lane,
his lane is terrible.
But then like if bot's ahead and Zeka can use like bot lead to get himself out of the lane phase, and that's another like a weapon added to your arsenal. And so really I thought that DRX was interesting. I didn't think that they were actually better than TeS. I thought that TeS, despite their numerous throws, had some of the best team fighting, and despite their lane phase not being the greatest outside of mid lane in terms of stability, right? Because I think Jackie Love tends to have quite a tumultuous, volatile like lane phase. I thought that they were a little stronger in that regard, and so I assume that that's why that's why we chose that direction. Now, as I said, my position is a bit limited because I'm working remotely and I'm not really doing too much. The greatest impact I have was working in the 2 weeks before we left. And that's where kind of like our meta read came from. I actually think that Europe is tremendously efficient in finding champions good in the meta, actually, compared to other regions, because we tend to be a little bit more creative from my experience in the LEC this year. And that's where the Maokai came from. Amongst top pros, the consensus is that actually Maokai loses to Sejuani in lane. But I actually think that Maokai can get pushed in early levels. And so what ended up happening with a lot of teams, well, this is my assumption, is that Maokai was more of a jungler than a top laner, not really a top laner. And it makes sense because Maokai has a lot of bad matchups, right? Like Fiora, Aatrox, these are, your traditional bad matchups. But when they're gone or really, really bad in the team comp or like for the opposition team comp, then, you'd always rather have a Maokai. And if you're able to actually play at top lane, the flexibility of it being a first pick compared to other champions is really, really powerful compared to something, let's just say, for example, an Aatrox, where even if you can flex at mid, I think its teamfight capabilities are really limited. It's countered by a lot of champions in bot side, like bot lane. And there are also a lot of bad matchups. For example, once again, the Fiora, which would counter the Maokai anyway, right? It would counter the Maokai or the Aatrox anyway. So it doesn't really matter what you pick into it unless you're going to pick something ranged into it, for example. And so this pick made a lot of sense for us. Oromne also, I would say, one of the best top tank players in the world, not just in Europe. And you could tell that he's super comfortable in the team fights with it. So that's kind of why we have that priority right now. And then I remember we just sat down watching the first couple scrims of Maokai. Me and Simon just looked at each other and we nodded our heads. We tried the Aatrox first pick, we tried everything, but then we just nodded our heads. And he said, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" And I said, he's like, and I said, "Maokai?" And he said, "Yeah, Maokai." The ulti is just, we just saw the ulti and we're like, this is so broken. Like,
yep. It's the combination of everything though that's so crazy. Like he's a vision hack. It's
you can support as well.
Yeah, you can play because it's a triple flex pick. I mean, we've even seen the damage coming out of some of these like more poke oriented builds with Demonic Embrace, like Maokai topping the damage charts, and some of that is going to be junk damage that you get off of saplings, but a lot of that sapling damage comes on people trying to get flanks on your composition while they're setting up for an objective because there's a sapling in that brush, and so it actually does end up having a lot of meaning and utility within some of these fights. So it is absolutely crazy, I think. And it's really the analyst's dream because he's like a Swiss Army knife. Like what the fuck can't he do?
By the way, one thing I want to ask was that's the other thing. When it was played the first time by you guys, everyone was like, well, that's the end of us seeing that for the rest of the tournament. And then Top just allowed it as well. So the question I have is,
no, I love that.
Does that mean from scrims or in scrims in general at Worlds, do you think people in scrims think they can deal with the Maokai? So it's not a problem. Like, what's the logic of why it's getting through?
Well, first of all, you don't scrim the same group. So
yeah, but a lot of the teams share information. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I have a lot of beef about this, by the way. I think it's so disgusting. But anyway,
I mean, we just have to admit that it happens. Nobody else.
Yeah, competitive integrity is a real big issue. But
yeah, I agree. I mean, you can see certain things, guys, about like what happens. I think I've said this before, but I think the most egregious one that I've seen, and again, take this for what it's worth. This is me reading the tea leaves. But when JDG bans Nidalee against Canyon, despite the fact that Damwon has now, will they play Nidalee at some point in this tournament? Probably, I would say. Maybe they don't try that until a best of 5. But when you see the Nidalee ban coming in, when Canyon hasn't played this champion, it really makes you wonder why there's this pocket ban, especially when JDG is on red side, where sometimes bans can be more at a premium, right? To remove this pick from.
Dude, I think it's even got the double component. It's that you not only know they're doing it in scrims, you want to just tell them. It's like if at the beginning of the chess game, Monty, you were like, oh, I guess next you're probably going to do like rook to F4. Like, holy shit, he knows it. He's inside my head. Like, it's almost like you're doing that as well. Like, fuck you.
For that example, though, to be fair, I look at a lot of solo queue VODs and like just very frequently, and Canyon played a lot of Nidalee in his soldier
Sure.
games. To be fair. So I do agree that this competitive integrity thing is an issue. It's happened before. It probably still happens. That's just my read on it.
Yeah, it's definitely happening.
I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. Probably. I hope anyway.
I mean, if people don't know, that's just, especially for Korean teams, that's an incredibly, I mean, I'm sure the Chinese teams are doing it as well, but famously the Korean players in games like StarCraft, and especially League of Legends, they used to have the sister teams, their logic literally is, like, it's nationalism. It's like, this is our duty to help the other Koreans win, and Korea has to win overall. My problem is, I agree with you, SeeEL. My problem is this. I think when you play someone in a scrim, obviously within your team, you're going to talk about it, but I think it goes without saying what happens in that scrim is in confidence, and that you actually are fucking with the competitive integrity of the game when you leak information to other people. Like, I think it's essentially immoral, or a minimum, like it's an unethical practice in the professional field of video gaming. Because in that scenario, think about this: if I scrim a bunch of stuff intentionally, not against people from my group, I'm doing it to potentially hide stuff and practice things they don't know about. And then on top of that, if in this scenario I then have to start playing mind games of like, oh, but is that team friends with the other one, and actually do they from that country share? I shouldn't even have to think about that. Like, I just practice my games, you practice your games, and we meet in the tournament, see who's better.
Right. And we also don't know the level too. Like, it could go from, oh yeah, hey, this player is really good at this thing and they're playing it a lot, to literal VODs, you know. And
oh mate, I'm pretty sure by the time like T1 reaches the final in a tournament, if they're playing against some Chinese team, it's like that fucking scene from the end of like the Queen's Gambit where they're all like 15 people on the phone, like, and then the other move you could try would be like, it's like, come on man, like, oh, I'm playing against 15 people at once, and just you, what's going on?
But yeah.
I mean, nationalism doesn't belong. Nationalism doesn't belong in competition. That's for sure. I'm not. I mean,
if it was the Olympics, maybe that'd be something different. But yeah, it's exactly. It's a team sport. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or be a pleb and don't.